Hello everyone, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, the Uncharted Frontiers, where we will explore the real solar system in all of its glory. And today we start out in the tech tree after our prior missions. We now have 45.3 science, and we're going to start unlocking some stuff like primitive satellites, re-entry for sure, that's been a problem, improved tankage, definitely some better Kirlox engines, communications, and let's get more aviation based stuff so we can actually explore the surrounding regions. So, without further ado, we will warp to the completion of all of our tech. It shouldn't take too long to complete, if I'm not mistaken. Should be roughly a decent time once it starts. Now we're in September of 1952, where we enter the vehicle assembly building once more. And we finally get a little taste of what's to come in future episodes of orbital vehicles, that is, as we will be starting the process of getting a vehicle to Earth orbit, as that is the next goal of our space program. We will for sure start researching that. We're going to use a redstone actuator, or maybe we could use a Pegasus, but early satellites are not gonna support that, so we'll just use some of our basic tank pieces we've collected thus far. 2.5 meters, that's not a 2 meter tank, I don't think. But whatever, nonetheless, we will definitely need the up and coming support of the vehicles that we will need to construct. As it is probably most apparent, getting vehicles into a high orbital state is very, very hard to do. The A4 engines will be our main propellant drive to get us into a good position to reach orbit, but I don't know how good they'll be functionality wise. I haven't really tested the A7s all too often. But 4,000 meters of Delta V and a controllable vehicle should be enough to get ourselves on a good path. So with the redstone rockets fins, we actually will be able to get to a much greater distance and test deploy, I want to say, our first groups of satellites, which are, I don't want to call them good because they're not really satellites, quote unquote. They're more vehicles that can withstand the space environment for slightly elongated amounts of time. Which, saying that, we will put a decoupler followed by, let's use, I don't think this thing has any communications, but that is not going to be a problem for the agency. We're just kind of gonna build the fairing around it and use it as a probe core, which is really all we can do with these updated vehicles. We can always try recovery, it is always an option, but in reality it's never really been considered for these early launch vehicles, especially for the fact that they are not really the kind of launch vehicle that we want to be using. So we're definitely going to put a camera on this like we said we would in last episode. That'll be our main focus of the mission. A thermometer once again, as that has become a staple of our program. That is most apparently known. Then we got into parachutes. So we did actually just unlock some radial parachutes, which we will be utilizing on this spacecraft. In the parachute editor, we'll use them at their previous smaller size, so they're more scaled to the environment around them. Pump them down in that area so they can give a nice idea of what's going on. And with that, the completion of the next vehicle has been made. And we will be naming this one the SRV3. I know, how creative. The SRV3 one. Which is the just reuse what we already have. First, SR V3 vehicle. Now, I don't think I want to put any decals on this one. I think it looks pretty nice as is, so we will kind of just save and hit launch. This will take 116 days to build, so we're getting into a territory where our vehicles will take a lot longer to be constructed, even pushing us to 1953, which is a bummer because we did want to get the next episode out with the orbital launch by 1953, and that may not happen. Now, if you notice, episodes 2 and 3 come out on the exact same day. That is no coincidence. That is just, well, I happen to record them on the same day because I might not have time to do so tomorrow. So, warping to the completion of this vehicle, it now is going to be January of 1953 upon the launch of the vehicle that we will be using here. It is now January 10th, maybe even the 11th when completed. We will have a decent amount of signs, I'd assume. Or not? Okay. Oh no, we have 18. Okay. Well, 18's a good amount of signs to keep. Now, we're not going to upgrade our science daily income that often, as it doesn't really benefit much of our agency. We will use our funds we have just received from doing literally nothing to unlock better scientific materials and possibly improve our understanding of solid rocket boosters. Should be incredibly useful in bringing us to orbit. So from that point, we will warp to completion of our, well, vehicle's construction, and the rollout time for that begins, which we'll wait for day, as that is what we decided would work for us. So we will now hit launch and get this vehicle on its path into the stars. Now, I do believe the Redstone control systems that we have unlocked, they have SAS. It's been a long time since I've used the American part mod of Blue Dog Design Bureau. So it will be interesting to see how we turn out to get from that point. I'm not going to make any exact replicas of any vehicle whatsoever. We did make something similar to the Redstone vehicle just now, so you will see inspired vehicles, but you will never see an exact clone of any specific vehicle. But as you see here, we get out into the launch pad still with no SAS, but the stabilization on our vehicle is much greater than what it had used to be. So, without further ado, we launch our vehicle off the ground. Very, very slow ascent, might I add. We only have a 1.6 for a, what's it called? Thrust to weight ratio, but it is slowly rising as we get upward. As you see, the vehicle is starting to bank very badly. That will be the first failure of our agency, I'd say. But oh no, we have parachutes for a reason. So any failure that we make is just a success in disguise. We will still profit from this vehicle and for sure use it to our technological advantage. This vehicle may have been a failure, but we will definitely keep it in consideration for further designs. So we didn't get really far with that. That's probably due to our poor thrust to weight ratio, but, well, we got somewhere. That's all we can ask for. Just gonna do a recover to the vehicle assembly building because I honestly do not really know what that does. So it will be interesting to see if that lets us recover the piece of the ship and reuse it with less efficiency. If that is the case, then I will happily continue doing that with all recovered pieces from now on. Just save some money wherever I can. So it looks like we're just loading back to the KSC, and the data collected from that was a decent amount. Well, that's good. Improve cryogenics. Actually, entry, descent, and landing would be very useful here because we do want to get jet propulsion systems up and running at a much better rate. So the refurbishment of the launch pad will obviously, reconditioning. Now back into the vehicle assembly building. We will recover what we have, see if that lets us reuse the vehicle. If not, then, well, we can start from scratch. That is completely fine. But, not pushing orbit yet. That will probably be next episode. Let's see what we have in our open menu. No, we just have the SRV-3 one. Okay, well, the SRV-3 one is not a bad vehicle at all. It's actually really good. Just way too much propellant, I think, is the problem. Because now you notice we still have the same amount of propellants, but we are at 150 for our descent, or not descent, delta V margin, which is a lot better than what we started with, but we're definitely going to make one small, minor, teensy-weensy adjustment, and that will be including a just one small, or a few small boosters that will hopefully carry this vehicle further up toward the area where we want it destined to be, and that area is not low Earth orbit, but definitely high Earth orbital space. That is for sure the goal. That would just be above the Kármán line, obviously, but with this vehicle, I think it looks a lot better than some of our prior designs, that's for sure. It's definitely a lot more abstract, if I do say so, but it's not a bad looking design. It's definitely the sounding rocket V3-2, which will be just nothing special. A hopeful residence to the world and a added build list vehicle. This will bring us into the middle months of 1953, so we may actually decently align with our real-life timeline of launching into orbit at 1957. We do, if anything, we want a crewed mission into orbit by 1965, the latest. That's just what I've decided I'm gonna go with, so, we will have a lot of time. Most of our jet propulsion systems will be fully researched by the time that we are ready. So, this probe, unfortunately, we can just scrap it, I guess. Just get money off it. I guess that's where they go. That's good to know. So, rollout time will be a few days. Now it is July of 1953, and the Kerbal Space Program will launch its next vehicle into the cosmos, and that vehicle is the SRV-3-2. It will hopefully carry itself to at least Africa. We do have landing sites in locations like the Congo and or Tanzania we are aiming for, because those two are very flat regions of Africa, so no mountainous terrain like in Ethiopia or Namibia. So we should have an easy time dealing with that ascent. So without further ado, 3, 2, 1, and ignition. Decently loud on my end. I obviously have the game muted, but that was loud. So we're just going to start going up for a little bit of time here. The vehicle's actually a lot more stable than I expected it to be, which is not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing. So we're going to start getting our, not gravity turn, but turn nonetheless out of the way, just so we have that opportunity of fine-tuned orbital adjustment to work with. Looks like that those stage separation mechanisms did not work, which is definitely odd, but we are going to try to propel this spacecraft out toward Africa. We just need ourselves to get into a position where we can call ourselves better at spaceflight than our enemies. So we get ourselves into a very odd orbital position where we kind of spin ourselves to make it more effective, deploying our parachutes and, separators, and separating the main spacecraft, which will sit over the Earth for a good amount of time before eventually coming to rest. And we will perform some ultraviolet studies, and we will take some photographs which we will transmit back to the Kerbal Space Center. Never mind. I guess we won't be transmitting. Bummer. But we will nonetheless attempt to re-land somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean around this point in time. We didn't reach our destination of the African continent. I do blame that on problems during ascent, but nonetheless, we still had the issue, and it still resonated. And luckily, this vehicle is bottom heavy, so we should have a nice, easy re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, and a nice and easy method. There is spare parachutes, it seems. So I don't know if we're going to use those to deploy. I don't know how we're meant to activate those, or if we can even, because of our orbital resonance. But that's interesting. I guess we have to control this thing's ungodly descent, which the boosters are still burning, oddly enough. While not producing any thrust, but producing the smoke that they produce from their vehicle. This will resonate, obviously, in a very large explosion over the Atlantic, or not, or just some vehicle that will need to be recovered. We will just normally recover everything, make it nice and simple for us here, and see if we made any money off that mission. It's been a rocky start to the space program, but we hope to have a successful orbital launch very, very soon. It has definitely been a program priority to get into orbit, that is for sure. But 0.2 science off of that, not bad, but incredibly bad. But we will use that money to further our research, especially with the idea of getting, some better aeronautical capabilities per se. Actually, upper stage guidance would be nice. Oh, basic SAS. There we go. Okay, now that we have basic SAS in a much better position. I haven't checked my upgrades in a while. We have 16 available points. We're gonna definitely put a good amount of those to the VAB until it reaches 0.9. Spaceplane hangar needs a ton. Then whatever we have left will go into 1. So that's just, that's good enough. Upper stage guidance researched. And today's episode will be ending off on September 9th, 1953. It's been another good episode, and I hope to see you guys in episode 4 of the Uncharted Frontier.